about to do something really stupid. Not one of those regular stupid things like forgetting my car keys or texting my crush when I'm drunk. No, this is epic level stupid. I'm about to rob a gas station. I'm running low on cash, you know, the kind of broke that hurts. Folks at home are struggling and we need the money. Desperate times and all that. I slide the mask down over my face. Funny how a piece of black fabric can make you feel 10 times braver. The neon sign outside's flickering, throwing shadows against the crumbling bricks. It's just me, the crickets, and the soft hum of a midnight road. I step inside. The bell jingles softly. I've got a lead pipe in my pocket, borrowed it from Dad's toolbox. The shelves are lined with packets of chips, rows of soda cans, candy bars, normal stuff. There's a bald guy behind the counter, back turned to me. He's watching something on a crappy old TV and doesn't turn around when I walk in. There's a weird feeling though, like a cold finger tracing down my spine. Something's not right. He's laughing at the screen, low and throaty. I approach the counter, hands sweaty. I have to do this. Hey, I croak, my voice barely more than a whisper. He doesn't turn around, just keeps laughing at the TV. That's when I notice the dude's watching static. The screen is just a bunch of black and white dots dancing, and he's laughing like it's the funniest thing in the world. My heart's thudding against my ribcage, louder than a goddamn drum. What the hell? This wasn't part of the plan. I think about bailing, but I can't. I've come this far. I pull out the pipe, the cold steel burning against my sweaty palm. Give me the cash, I blurt out, pointing the pipe at him. The guy finally turns around and I freeze. His eyes, they're empty. There's no other way to describe it. It's like staring into a deep, dark well. His grin stretches from ear to ear, showing rows of jagged yellow teeth. It's not a friendly grin. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, just grins at me with those empty eyes. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. It's like he knows something I don't, like he's waiting for me to crack. Then the bell over the door jingles softly. The man's eyes light up as he sees something enter, his decaying grin intensifying. I don't dare turn around. I feel a presence move behind me, but I'm shaking, my whole body trembling. I can't move, can't speak, can't do anything but stare into those empty eyes. The door jingles again. His eyes follow something else moving even closer to me, and I feel the air shift. A gentle exhale on the back of my neck. The bald guy leans over the counter, bringing his face closer to mine. I can see the wrinkles in his skin, smell the stench of his breath. His eyes are still empty, but there's something else in them now. Pity. He makes eye contact with whatever was behind me and shakes his head. I feel the presence behind me back off. Slowly he reaches under the counter, never breaking eye contact. He pulls out a small brown bag and slides it across to me. The bag's heavy, clinking with the sound of coins. It's the money. It's right there within my reach. I should feel relieved, happy even, but all I feel is dread. His gaze is still on me, those empty eyes boring into mine. He hasn't said a word, hasn't moved an inch, just keeps staring at me with that weird, unsettling look. The door slams shut behind me, the bell jingling softly one last time. Whatever was in here has now definitely left. I still dare not look around. I grab the bag, stuff it into my pocket and run. I run until the gas station's out of sight. I run until my lungs burn. It was just another Friday night. I was working my old-school rundown gas station job on the outskirts of Nowheresville, Nebraska. On a good night, I'd probably see like 5 cars. It was the kind of job that my dad used to call character building, but it was mostly just bone-numbingly boring. This Friday was different, though. I had my usual dull shift ahead of me when my friend Pete strolled into the station, looking a bit more sketchy than usual. He whipped out this baggie full of weird, gnarly-looking mushrooms and flashed me a grin that screamed bad decisions. "Dude," he said, "they're magic. You in?" I'd never done drugs or anything, but this shift was boring as hell, and I was curious. What's the worst that could happen, right? I chewed a couple and they tasted like old gym socks, but hey, no pain, no gain. For a while nothing happened, but then things started going sideways. The stale smell of gas became intense, almost sweet, and the flickering fluorescent lights looked like they were dancing. But it wasn't just that. The sounds too, they were off. The hum of the soda machines became a symphony, and the ringing of the cash register sounded like it came from a cathedral bell. Everything was amplified, dialed up to 11. About an hour in, the door chimes rang out like the first notes of Beethoven's Fifth. In walks this tall, shady dude. His eyes were hidden behind dark glasses even though it was midnight. He was wearing a long black coat, like he was trying to be in the Matrix or something. But the weirdest thing was the way he moved, all jerky, like a puppet on a string. He grabbed a six-pack from the cooler, tossed it onto the counter, and said, "I'm robbing you." I laughed. His voice sounded like a rusty hinge and made me think of a cartoon villain. I was tripping balls, and the whole thing felt like some kind of weird dream. "No, for real, give me the money," he said, reaching into his coat. It was a gun. Real life, not shiny like in the movies, but black and oily. And suddenly everything became real serious. He took off his sunglasses to reveal a pair of bloodshot eyes that were bleeding down his face. His hands were elongated and skeletal with long, dirty fingernails that appeared more like claws. Waves of undulating panic kicked in, and everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. The mushroom effects amplified the situation, turning up the terror to extreme levels. I reached for the cash in the register but fumbled and dropped the cash on the floor. The guy looked confused, then laughed, the gun dropping slightly. For a moment I thought I'd defused the situation, but then he jerked up the gun, face hardening. My heart pounded against my ribs. Right then a patrol car pulled into the gas station. The dude bolted, leaving his six-pack on the counter. It felt like the world started spinning again at regular speed. The cops followed him, sirens screaming into the night. When the adrenaline faded, I was left standing there, sobered up, heart still beating like a drum. I felt like puking. The magic was gone. I took a deep breath. The smell of gas was just gas again. I never touched magic mushrooms after that. The world's weird enough without them. Working at a gas station in a semi-rough part of town brought its fair share of unusual encounters. As the clock struck 10 p.m., I activated the magnetic lock on the door. It was a safety measure to ensure that only customers with visible faces could enter the gas station at night. The neighborhood had seen its fair share of petty crimes, and we took every precaution to stay safe. That night, I was tasked with the usual closing duties like checking and managing inventory levels. But I also got the sweet job of cutting and wrapping glazed donuts for the following morning. The faint scent of warm pastries wafted through the air, creating a sweet smell amidst the dimly lit store. As I focused on my task, I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. Glancing towards the entrance, I saw a figure approaching. My instincts kicked in as I noticed the hood pulled over their head and hands tucked away in their hoodie pocket. They shuffled towards the door, their heads still lowered, making it impossible to see their face. My stomach lurched as the figure reached the door and tugged on it. The magnetic lock held firm, preventing them from entering. But then, in an eerie move, the figure slowly raised their head, revealing a chilling sight. Their face was completely covered by a dirty fabric with 2 eye holes cut out, and what looked like red candle wax dripping from the eye holes. I felt a surge of panic rise, and I immediately dialed the police while keeping an eye on the intruder. They stood there perfectly still, just staring at me. As I whispered the situation to the dispatcher, I noticed that the figure seemed unfazed by the sight of me on the phone. It was almost as if they knew I was contacting the authorities. Fear gnawed at my insides. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way, but as the minutes passed, the figure didn't budge. They remained there, staring relentlessly for what felt like an eternity. Just as I was beginning to lose hope, the figure made a chilling move. Slowly, they raised their hand and gave me a small, sinister wave. My heart skipped a beat, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. Without breaking eye contact, the figure turned and walked away, vanishing into the darkness outside. I let out a shaky breath as they disappeared from sight, but my relief was short-lived. The unsettling encounter left me shaken to the core. The police arrived shortly after, but there was no trace of the masked person. The officers took my statement, but were perplexed by the bizarre nature of the encounter. In the following days, news of the mysterious masked figure spread like wildfire in the community. Rumors and speculations swirled around town, adding an air of mystery and terror to the incident. During an ordinary day shift, I found myself doing the monotonous task of tidying up the front of house products, arranging them in neat rows. As I worked, a strange sensation tugged at the corner of my eye. I noticed my coworker standing in the doorway of the dimly lit storage area. She beckoned me forwards to follow her into the back of the store. Kind of intrigued, I set aside my work and trailed behind her, my eyes fixed on her back as she moved ahead of me. She rounded the corner and I called out her name, expecting her to acknowledge me. To my surprise, there was no sign of her. I looked all around the dimly lit storeroom, but she had vanished. I called out her name again. No answer. I couldn't comprehend how she could have disappeared. There was only one entrance into the room. Finally, after a moment of silence, her voice carried through the store from a distant corner, startling me. She clocked in to start her shift and was nowhere near the storeroom as I had initially thought. Instead, she stood at the opposite side of the store, adjacent to the restrooms, a considerable distance away from where I was standing. I couldn't fathom what I was seeing. When I explained what I'd thought I'd seen to my colleague, she semi-taunted me and laughed nervously. I couldn't shake off the feeling, and my coworker's perplexed expression mirrored my own. Despite our efforts to rationalize the situation, we found no plausible explanation for what had just transpired. The unease lingered. What, had I followed into the storeroom,